нельзя рисковать, потому что у них есть дом. В доме горит свет. И я не знаю точно, кто из нас прав. Меня ждет на улице дождь и ждет дома обед. Закрой за мной дверь, я ухожу.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, today, on this day, Sergeant Daniel S. is back. He's back with another tutorial. Today I'm going to do a tutorial not on marksmanship, but possibly something more enticing, something more dangerous, something more nerve-wracking. That involves snow and skating, ice and cold. You're right, skiing. So today we're gonna do a tutorial on how to ski, how to properly choose your skis, and how to maintain your skis during your off season and after you've skated. And so, what we're gonna begin with is not with maintenance, not with the techniques, but with the most important parts, the choice that you wanna make with your skis. So what skis do you want to choose and what poles do you want to use? Now, the first thing we're going to talk about is the equipment you want to choose. Now, the equipment is probably one of the most important things when you're choosing your skis. Some athletes, they make the mistake and don't really bother with the configuration of their equipment and believe that the technique that they use is the most important thing. They're right, but equipment is also a very, very important factor. Because really, the quality and the way you choose your equipment and the equipment that's configured to you could judge a lot in your glide. There's three very important equipments when you're choosing to ski. Those are the boots, the pole, and the ski itself, the most important thing. We're gonna start with the skis since they're the most important thing. So there's a few things you need to look at. So the first thing you need to look at is the height. Actually, before that, you need to look at the type of skis. So there's two types of skis. There's skating skis and there's classic skis. Skating skis are most preferable for moving forward, not sliding down, but moving forwards, like in biathlon or in speed skating competitions. For classic ones, they're just classic, and they're just for the ones that go down in resorts and all that sorts of stuff. Now, the second thing you need to look at is the height of the skis. The height of the skis really improve your glide when you're skating, because it can because the right height could distribute the mass more properly across the ski. So according to biathlon regulations, competition regulations, the ski should be, or just in any competition, the ski should be no smaller than your height minus 4 centimeters, which suggests that the skis must be higher than you. For beginners, it's suggested to have 10 to 20 centimeters, skis that are 10 to 20 centimeters higher than your height. And professionals, they really pinpoint down to the perfect centimeter of height for their skis to produce the optimal glide. That's how important the height is. Second thing you should look at is the camber, which is the curvature of the skis. The camber really also helps distribute the weight properly, and you will choose different camber on your skis depending on your weight, and you should look at the imprints on the ski themselves to identify your proper camber for the skis. Now, why is camber important? If you have skis that have a lower camber curvature than your weight, then according to your weight, it might press down on the snow and slow you down when skating. And the same might apply for a camber that is higher according to your weight, because you would be skiing not like this but like this on the snow, and it would be really uncomfortable navigating it, and it would just be, it would just ruin your skills. So make sure to choose the right camera. The third thing you should look at is if the skis, especially a ski shop, if the skis are correct. What I mean, if they align perfectly together, if their camber is perfectly like made, if they're not scratched, not damaged, and just perfectly aligned together. If they don't bother with those, because that could really ruin consistency, and just you could be turning randomly because the skis don't have the right height, and it's just going to be messy for you. And finally, when you went to your ski shops and you found specific skis, you found the skis that matched to you. If you found none, go to another one. But if you found some, you could look at the following things: the quality, which company made it, the material it's made from, and if you feel like it's going to be good for you. If it's not going, if it doesn't look cheap, or if it's not looking fragile, then you can keep that one. And the rest applies for your ski selection at your ski shop. And finally, you could look at the texture of your skis. There's some skis that are more fine, and there's others that are more rough and have a rougher texture on them. After you've chosen your skis, then you can choose your boots. Boots are much simpler to choose than skis. You just have to find the most comfortable boot that aligns with your skis. So for an example, a Salomon boot has to be you have to find a Salomon boot for a Salomon type of ski, and similarly, or Rossignol or Alpina boot must be found to bind with a Alpina or Rossignol ski. And the same applies for all the types of bindings that exist in a skiing world. When you found your boots and your skis, you can then follow through and find the perfect poles for you, which should be, the height of which should be around your nose and chin, so somewhere around here. And the material, there's lots of materials that poles are made. There's aluminum, graphite, carbon fiber, and many more materials. But for beginners, it's suggested that you choose aluminum or carbon fiber type of poles, because they're the lightest and one of the most cheap.
Boy, mate, they might be light, but they're not the most cheapest. Poles are poles, and there's probably material much more cheaper. They're the most solid type of poles, man. And you should get used to those poles to train on them. And then you can freaking go on other poles, man. Seriously, what's this?
Dan the Waterman. We've discussed about equipment. Now, how do we maintain the equipment? The only thing you pretty much have to maintain is your skis. Of course, you're not gonna freaking throw around your boots or your poles anywhere you go and then be like, they're not gonna ever break and I don't need to maintain them. Clean them after your practice, or just take good care of them as well. But for skis, there's a specific thing you need to do. You need to wax them, because the base of the ski can scratch very, very easily, and it's not going to be as good as a glide if you do not wax them. So you should use skiing waxes. Now, There are a few types of skiing waxes you could use. You could use fluorocarbon. You could use high fluoro and low fluoro and hydrocarbon paraffin. And different waxes are used for different temperatures and different weathers. So for fluorocarbon, that type of wax is the most expensive wax on the market. It's usually used for international and national competitions, and it's not really a good use to use it during a normal practice because you're gonna just waste a lot of money on this thing. And if you're not a national or international player in biathlon or other skiing competitions, you don't really need that. For high fluoro, it's pretty expensive, but not as expensive as fluorocarbon. It's also used in competitions, and it's used for weathers that have 50% humidity or somewhere around minus 20 degrees. For low fluoro waxes, those are pretty cheap, but not the cheapest on the market still. They're used in 70% humidity. What I mean by humidity is the snow, and somewhere around minus 10, minus 15 degrees weather. And the most common wax you have on the market is hydrocarbon paraffin, which is used in training and in cold weather, like low humidity and cold weather. So in colder, drier weathers, you would skate a bit more on your skis, and you would use hydrocarbon paraffin for that. Now that aside, when you pick your skis, you need a ski iron. To apply the wax on top of this, on the bottom of the ski. I mean, so to apply the wax, there's two ways you could use to apply the wax. You could either use the drip technique, where you just heat up the iron and apply the wax, or you could use the crayon technique, where you heat up the wax a little bit and then drag it along the ski. Either way is fine, it's up to preference, but I would prefer doing it the crayon way because it's less wasteful than the dripping technique used. Now, speaking of irons, you should be aware of what irons you pick. You pick usually the irons that are made by brand companies or companies that are known to be reliable or big, because if you pick a random ski iron, you could really damage your skis, either burn them or ruin the texture on the bottom and just put your skis to waste. Now, after you've waxed them, you have to also scrape them off, so you have to use a scraper to scrape off the wax, or use a horseshoe brush to scrape it off, because the texture is not the most preferable texture when you just apply it, because it's going to be rugged, it's going to be rough, and it's not going to glide as well. So you need to scrape off the wax. So take your scraper and carefully, don't push it down, because you could also scratch the bottom of the skis. But you have to apply a little bit of pressure and then just drag it along, and wax your skis like that. And also make sure to wax the center of the ski as well, where there's a little bit of a divot, to make sure you have the optimal glide for your skis. And that is pretty much it for waxing. There's just one more thing. And before I go on to that last thing, one more thing, you have to wait until your wax dries completely. So put your skis against the wall, not wax first, skis first, and let the wax dry off cool off, I should say, for around 30 minutes. And if the skis are still warm, don't touch the wax, touch the skis. Wait for another 5 minutes. If it's still warm, wait until it cools off to room temperature. But it shouldn't take that long. It should be about 30 to 35 minutes until you can put them back. Speaking of putting them back, you should always put your skis back when you're finished either practicing or waxing them. It's a better idea to just put them back, because they can also fall as well. If someone unsuspecting just goes in your ski room, it's just better to put them back, essentially. The way you put them back, you have specific ski clips that apply on both sides of the skis, both ends of the skis. On one end you put them, on the other end you put them, and then you have to put them in a ski bag, in a specific ski bag by themselves, so that dust won't accumulate, so that they're completely safe, and if there's any debris that falls on it, the bag could protect them to a certain extent. And if you also want to transport them so they don't fall and that they don't scratch on something in the car or in the place you're transporting them, you would have to, it's a better idea to put them in a bag. Now that that is settled, let's go to the techniques you would want to learn when you're skiing. Now that we discussed the type of equipment you need and the maintenance of it, now let's discuss the techniques you must know when skiing. Now, first and foremost, probably the most important technique you should know when skiing is the double poling technique. The double poling technique is what allows your whole body to propel you forward and glide you forward when you're skiing. So, to begin with the double poling technique, start with your poles going down, making an 80-degree angle with the ground. And when you're doing that, space out your arms just a little bit away from your shoulders, and your elbow should create a 110 degree angle. Then your shoulder, your armpit should create an approximate 85 to 95 degree angle when you're in that position. Your legs should be straight, slightly bent, and your skis should be parallel to the ground and parallel to each other. If they're not parallel to each other, they're just going to go into different directions and it's going to halt you. When you're ready with that, you can start pushing. So the pushing sequence should use your whole body. So try not to change the angles except the angles on your shoulders when propelling yourself forward. Bend down a little bit. Use your core muscles, your hips and your chest and everything on your torso to propel you forward. And when you did that, glide for a little bit and then repeat the same thing. And that's the double poling technique. Now that we have created a great foundation for our poling techniques, let us create the most important foundation in skiing, is the skiing part itself, otherwise known as skating on skis, which is the basis, like I said, of the whole skiing, of all skiing techniques. So first of all, to start with that, you will be using both of your feet at the same time. One foot will always be pushing off, the other will be gliding, and then as soon as the glide starts to descend, you need to be placing your other foot next to the other foot and then push off with the foot that you were gliding with. Like that, it creates a skating pattern like this. And when doing that, you need to keep two things in mind. First is when you're gliding on those skis, you have to keep your legs as straight as possible. Straight this way and straight that way, and be skating. And as soon as you're slowing down and starting to push up on the other one, bend your knees on both of your legs. And as soon as you touch the ground with the other one, you push off with the force of both of your legs to then glide to the other direction. And like that, you're going to be skating on those skis all the time. And with that process, you repeat. Now that you know how to skate and pole, you could use both of those techniques in techniques called once skating and double skating while you ski. Both of those are essentially almost the same thing. It's just with one skating, you skate once, you glide with one foot once, and then you pull. And for double skating, it's you skate twice and then you pull. And once you get the hang of it, it's going to be simple. But for turning in biathlon or just skiing in general, there's one main way to turn. And it's to just glide on the same foot over and over again. You're gliding and then you just push yourself away and then you're just going to turn. Like that. Same applies for both feet, depending on what what way you're turning, essentially. So yeah, that is essentially it for the basics of skiing. When you've mastered those, you can go on to master more techniques and speed faster and learn how to climb on skis as well, and learn how to descend and snowplow. And once you get the hang of those, you'll become a pretty experienced ski skater. Or at least you'll know how to skate on skis. That's the most important part right there. At least you know how to skate. And once you do, it'll be very, very fun. This was Sergeant Daniel S. Hopefully you enjoyed this lesson. Hopefully you learned something new today on this tutorial. And hopefully you will ski in the future once winter comes, or unless you're in Tasmania or in the mountains. I wish the best of health for all of you, and I wish the best of experience and luck. Once again, this was Sergeant Daniel S. Have a nice day.